Jack wakes up to the soft vibration of his phone alarm. The room dim and familiar. Pale morning light slipping through half-closed blinds. His ceiling fan ticking unevenly above him. The smell of old coffee lingering in the air. Everything feels normal enough to ignore the dull weight in his chest. Another weekday beginning, another routine waiting. Another life that feels borrowed but comfortable enough to keep living without questions. He reaches for his phone and scrolls through notifications. Missed emails from work. A weather alert. A reminder to pay rent. His lock screen photo shows a city skyline he barely remembers visiting, yet it feels important somehow. Jack sits up on the edge of the bed, rubbing his eyes, the floor cold under his feet. His reflection in the dark screen, staring back like it expects something he cannot recall. In the bathroom mirror, his face looks the same as always. Tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a faint scar near his eyebrow with no clear memory attached to it. The tap runs too loud as he washes his face, water splashing against porcelain. Outside, a car horn blares, followed by distant sirens. City noise, blending into the background like it always does. Nothing unusual enough to trigger fear yet. Jack dresses for work on autopilot. Jeans, hoodie, sneakers. He checks his wallet, keys, phone, the same checklist drilled into muscle memory. The apartment feels small, but safe. Walls lined with cheap furniture and unfinished plans. He pauses briefly at the door with a strange hesitation, like he is forgetting something important. But the feeling fades as quickly as it arrives. The hallway smells of cleaning chemicals and stale air. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead as Jack walks toward the elevator. A neighbor nods silently while unlocking their door. Normal human interactions that require no thought. The elevator ride down is slow and quiet. Soft music playing from a speaker above. Jack checks his reflection again in the mirrored walls, searching for a reason he cannot name. Outside the building, the city moves like a machine waking up. Traffic crawling, people glued to their phones, street vendors setting up carts. The sky overcast but calm. Jack pulls his hood tighter and joins the flow of commuters. The sidewalk vibrations traveling up through his shoes, grounding him in the moment. This world feels solid, predictable, safe enough to trust, without question. On the bus, Jack takes the same seat near the window, watching buildings blur past. Advertisements flashing promises of better lives and cheaper escapes. A news screen above the driver plays silently. Headlines scrolling too fast to read clearly. He barely pays attention, zoning out as the bus stops and starts. His mind drifting through empty thoughts that never fully form into memories. At work, the office smells like recycled air and burnt coffee. Keyboards clicking in uneven rhythms. Co-workers greet Jack with tired smiles and casual jokes. He responds automatically, slipping into a role he knows well. Sitting at his desk, he opens files he does not remember creating, yet his hands move confidently, typing, editing, fixing problems like he has done this life countless times before. Hours pass unnoticed. Lunch is eaten without taste. Conversation drifts around him like static. Jack laughs when expected and nods when required. A sense of distance grows quietly behind his eyes, as if he is watching himself from somewhere slightly out of place. But the routine keeps pulling him forward, each task reinforcing the illusion that this is where he belongs. In the afternoon, the office lights dim briefly during a power flicker. Screens go black for a second before returning. A few people complain but quickly move on. Jack feels a sudden chill crawl up his spine, his heart racing without reason. The moment passes yet leaves behind a thin crack in his calm, like something underneath the surface just shifted. When the workday ends, Jack heads home along the same route, the sky darker now. Shadows stretching between buildings, sirens echo again somewhere far away. Louder than before, pedestrians seem more tense, though no one speaks about it. Jack checks his phone instinctively, expecting an alert that never comes. The silence feels heavier than noise. Back in his apartment, Jack drops his keys onto the table and exhales deeply, the familiar walls closing around him again. He turns on the television for background noise, collapsing onto the couch. The anchor on screen speaks calmly about everyday topics. Nothing alarming, yet Jack cannot shake the feeling that this normal life is fragile, like a thin layer stretched over something waiting to break. The television volume drops suddenly as the anchor pauses mid-sentence. her smile frozen for a second too long. Jack leans forward, confused. The screen flickers, then resumes as if nothing happened. Yet her eyes look strained now, like she is reading something off camera. Jack feels that same cold sensation returned, crawling slowly through his chest, while the room remains otherwise silent. A phone notification buzzes loudly on the table. An emergency alert without sound instructions? Only blank space where text should be. Jack refreshes it repeatedly, but nothing loads. The signal bars remain full, yet the device feels useless. Outside, a distant scream cuts through the evening air, then stops abruptly, replaced by traffic noises. Pretending nothing happened at all, Jack steps toward the window and peers down at the street. People are still walking, cars still moving, but something is off in their rhythm. A man stands completely still near a crosswalk, staring at nothing. Another woman walks in circles, muttering under her breath. Jack watches carefully, waiting for someone to react, but everyone else keeps moving like they do not notice. The smell hits him next. Faint, but unmistakable. Something rotten carried by the wind. Jack opens the window wider and listens. The city sounds feel thinner now, less layered, like pieces are missing. Sirens begin to rise again in the distance. Closer this time, overlapping each other in a way that makes his skin prickle with unease. Down on the street, the motionless man suddenly looks up, his face slack and pale. His mouth opens, and he speaks. The words drift upward, faint but clear. He calls out a name with desperation, not a groan, but a plea. Jack freezes as the man begins to cry, tears running down a face that should not look that empty. A passerby bumps into the crying man and recoils in horror, shouting for help. The man lunges forward with unnatural strength, knocking them both to the ground. Jack hears bones crack. Nearby people finally react. Screams erupt as panic spreads. Yet the attacker keeps talking, apologizing between violent movements, like he knows exactly what he is doing. Jack backs away from the window as more figures stumble into view, some dragging feet, others moving too fast, their mouths forming words instead of snarls. Fragments of conversation float upward, regrets, memories, names. The sounds clash violently with the actions. This is wrong in a way his mind struggles to process. Fear settling deep in his stomach. The television cuts to static, then switches to emergency footage without warning. Shaky camera angles show chaos on city streets. Reporters whisper instead of shout, their voices trembling. One word flashes briefly on the screen before disappearing. Containment. Jack notices the ticker repeats the same sentence over and over, like the system is stuck. His phone vibrates again. This time, a message appears from an unknown contact. Just one line, do not let them speak to you. Jack rereads it repeatedly as his heart pounds harder. Another message tries to load, but fails. The sender name glitches into symbols, then vanishes completely, leaving the screen dark. A loud thud echoes from the hallway outside his apartment, followed by frantic knocking on doors. Someone screams for help, then starts sobbing. Jack presses his ear to the door, listening. Footsteps drag past slowly, accompanied by whispered apologies and broken sentences. His hands shake as he realizes the voices sound calm, even while terror fills the air. The hallway lights flicker violently and go out, plunging everything into darkness. Jack locks his door quietly and backs away, his breathing shallow and fast. The city outside now filled with overlapping screams and pleading voices. This is not random violence. It feels organized in a way he cannot yet understand. Like rules are being tested. Jack sinks onto the floor with his back against the couch, trying to steady himself. His normal life already feels distant, unreal. Whatever's happening is spreading too fast to escape. And deep down, a thought forms that terrifies him more than a noise outside. This world did not break by accident. It changed on purpose. The first knock on his door is gentle, almost polite. Jack holds his breath as a familiar voice speaks his name. It sounds like his neighbor from across the hall. Calm and clear, asking for help, explaining there has been an accident. Jack grips the door handle tightly. Every instinct screams danger, yet the voice carries memories and warmth that make hesitation feel deadly. Jack does not answer. Minutes pass. Then the knocking stops. Instead, the voice continues speaking through the door, recalling shared elevator rides, borrowed tools, casual jokes, details no strangers should know. Jack slides down the wall, shaking, realizing the thing outside remembers a life. Not fragments, not instincts, but experiences tied to real emotions. A sudden crash echoes down the hallway, followed by violent movement. The voice changes, apologizing repeatedly while smashing into another apartment door. Jack hears screams cut short, followed by wet sounds he cannot forget. The creature keeps talking through it all, begging forgiveness as if aware of every action. Jack understands now that memory has survived death. His phone lights up again with a new message from the same unknown sender. Reading simply, "Silence keeps you alive." Jack nods unconsciously, as if someone can see him. He turns off all lights and mutes the television. The apartment falls into heavy darkness, broken only by distant voices repeating names like prayers. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time feels unstable. Jack peers through the peephole when the hallway grows quiet. The floor is smeared with dark shapes. Bodies lie twisted in unnatural positions. Some still move slightly, mouths opening and closing in silent speech. Jack steps back, realizing movement attracts attention. Stillness feels safer here. Hunger forces Jack to move. He opens a cupboard slowly, every sound amplified in his ears. A can slips from his hand and hits the counter with a sharp clang. Instantly, voices respond outside. Footsteps rushing closer. Jack freezes mid-breath as whispers press against the door again. Angry now, demanding to be let in. The door shakes under sudden impacts. Not mindless pounding, but targeted strikes, like something testing weak points. Between hits, the voices argue with themselves, expressing fear and confusion. Jack covers his mouth to stop himself from breathing too loudly, realizing noise invites them. But silence only delays the inevitable. A window shatters somewhere below, followed by shouting, "The attackers retreat toward the sound." Jack exhales slowly. His legs numb. The pattern becomes clear. Sound draws them. Memory guides them. Violence comes with regret, but no restraint. This world has rules written in suffering, and learning them too late costs lives. Jack notices something else unsettling. When he closes his eyes, the voices do not fade. Instead, they echo faintly inside his head. Like distant radio chatter, he senses emotions that are not his own. Confusion, longing, guilt. The connection vanishes when he panics, returning only when he focuses on staying calm. Another message arrives, shorter than before. They feel what you feel. Jack swallows hard. Understanding settles in like a weight. Fear is not just dangerous, it is contagious here. Emotions bleed across the boundary between living and dead. Control might be the only shield left. From the window, Jack sees emergency lights flashing blocks away. Soldiers forming lines, shouting orders. The undead hesitate at the sound of authority. Some even stop moving entirely, listening. Jack realizes commands still mean something to them. Hierarchy, lingering beyond death. A terrifying persistence of the old world refusing to disappear. Jack sinks against the wall again, exhausted and shaken. The rules are clear now, even without explanation. Speak and die. Panic and die. Draw attention and die. This apocalypse is not about hunger. It is about memory weaponized. And Jack knows deep inside that surviving this world will demand more than silence. Jack waits until the city quiets into something like a held breath, then moves with deliberate care. Every step planned, every sound measured. He wraps cloth around his shoes to dull impact, tapes cabinet doors shut, and marks creaking floorboards with chalk. The apartment becomes a maze, he understands. Survival shrinking into precise motions that punish mistakes instantly. He experiments cautiously, rolling a coin across the floor and freezing. Voices stir outside like wind through leaves, then fade. He drops a book harder and retreats. The response is immediate. Footsteps surge and words spill with panic and apology. Jack learns volume matters more than meaning, intensity more than duration. The world reacts to spikes like wounds. Jack practices breathing until his pulse slows on command. He counts silently, focusing on edges and textures. emotions steadying like a leveled horizon. When fear rises, the whispers return inside his skull. When calm settles, they thin and drift away. Control is not bravery here. It is camouflage, a discipline, learned through terror and repetition. He ventures into the hallway at dawn, door opening inch by inch. The smell is overwhelming. Bodies line the corridor. Some still murmur, eyes tracking movement with recognition. Jack keeps his gaze low and moves slowly. One whispers his name incorrectly. Another asks for water. Jack does not answer, and they do not follow. Stairs prove safer than elevators. He descends with patience, timing steps between distant noises. On the third floor, a figure blocks the landing. A former security guard by the uniformed posture firm despite decay. The guard raises a hand and speaks softly, asking Jack to stop. Authority still intact. Jacobazon waits until it turns away. Outside the building, the street is transformed. Wrecked cars, barricades, half-built, flyers warning to stay quiet. Jack scavenges carefully, choosing soft foods and fabric over weapons. A scream nearby draws a flood of bodies. Toward it, Jack slips behind a parked truck, heart steady. Learning when not to move is the hardest skill. He meets survivors who communicate with gestures and notes. Their eyes hollow but alert. They share rules without words, tapping throats for silence, palms down for calm. One man panics and bolts. The group does not follow. Minutes later, his voice returns screaming apologies from somewhere unseen. The lesson lands heavier than any warning. At night, Jack dreams of rooms he never lived in, of faces he almost recognizes. He wakes knowing how to do things he never learned. Knots, roots, hiding places. The knowledge fades quickly, but leaves residue, a sense of rehearsal. Like this is not his first attempt. Like the world is watching to see if he improves. Jack tests his emotion again, thinking of warmth and steadiness. The whispers soften. He imagines anger, and hears a distant chorus surge. He clamps it down, sweat cold on his neck. Understanding sharpens. Feelings as signals here. Broadcasting location and intent. Mastering them costs energy and time. Mistakes cost flesh. When a child approaches speaking gently about home, Jack nearly breaks. The voice is small and careful. Memories intact. Tears threaten his focus. The child lunges suddenly. Strength impossible for the frame. Jack dodges and flees, guilt crashing after him. He learns mercy is louder than cruelty in this world. Days blur together as Jack maps quiet zones and danger flows. He leaves marks only, he understands. Adapts routes as patterns shift. The dead learn to testing boundaries, remembering failures. The city becomes a dialogue of restraint and pressure. Jack feels studied, measured, as if success is being scored somewhere unseen. By the end of the week, Jack survives, not by fighting, but by precision, silence, and emotional discipline. He is thinner, sharper, lonelier. The cost etched into his posture. Adaptation has kept him alive, but every rule mastered tightens the sense that this place was designed to teach him something, and the test is not finished. Jack realizes survival alone is not enough. Movement without purpose only delays an ending. He studies patterns in the dead, how they cluster near memories, old workplaces, schools, homes. When names are whispered nearby, they converge faster. He chooses routes that avoid meaning empty spaces with no history attached, learning geography shaped by emotion rather than distance. He tests leadership influence carefully, copying the firm tone of authority he observed earlier. A single command spoken softly but steady. The nearby dead pause, confusion rippling through them. Jack retreats immediately, heart pounding. It worked briefly, but the effort drains him deeply, as if asserting control exposes him. Power here demands a price he cannot yet afford. A survivor group invites Jack to join using written notes. They're sheltered underground, rules strict, silence enforced. Jack hesitates. Groups amplify emotion. Fear spreads faster in crowds. Yet isolation erodes focus. He weighs the risk, joins them cautiously, setting boundaries, choosing cooperation as an experiment rather than trust. Knowing one wrong moment could doom them all. Inside, the shelter tension simmers constantly. One person crying can attract disaster. Jack teaches breathing techniques through gestures. Calm spreads unevenly. A sudden argument breaks out silently, faces twisted with rage. The dead outside stir. Instantly, pounding begins. Jack forces the group into stillness, absorbing fear like a sponge until the noise fades again. Jack notices the dead respond differently to him, lingering longer, watching closer, as if recognizing something familiar. He feels pressure behind his eyes when they stare. Fragments of other lives brushing against his thoughts. He resists pulling away, instead grounding himself, realizing avoidance may not always be the answer. Sometimes endurance reveals new paths. When supplies run low, Jack volunteers for solo runs. Fewer emotions to manage alone. He moves through ruins with practiced calm, avoiding places heavy with memory. A grocery store filled with sobbing voices nearly breaks him. He escapes narrowly, learning that abundance attracts suffering. Scarcity offers safety. Choice becomes an equation written in nerves. A fellow survivor panics during a run and grabs Jack desperately, shouting his name. The dead respond instantly. Jack makes a choice that haunts him. He pries the hands away and runs, leaving the voice behind. The screams end quickly. Survival's secured at the cost of something internal cracking quietly. That night, the whispers return stronger than before. Accusing and pleading, Jack focuses until they recede. But the echo remains. Guilt here has weight. Emotion leaves residue. He understands now that choices accumulate, not just in memory, but in the world itself, shaping how reality responds to him next. The unknown sender texts again, delayed and distorted. Progress noted. Jack freezes. Confirmation of being watched settles heavy in his gut. This is not random survival. It is evaluation. Every decision logged somewhere beyond sight. He deletes the message, but the awareness cannot be erased. Jack experiments with sacrifice and restraint, testing which choices provoke attention. The dead react more strongly when he saves others than when he saves himself. Heroism is noisy here. Selfishness, quieter. The lesson is cruel, but clear. Morality has consequences, measured in blood, and the system does not reward intent. As days pass, Jack feels sharper but colder. Emotions flattened into tools. He hates the efficiency growing inside him, yet it keeps him alive. Adaptation reshapes identity, and he wonders if that is the real purpose of this world. Not to kill him, but to change what survives. Standing watch at a shelter entrance, Jack senses a shift, patterns tightening, reactions faster, as if the world adjusts to difficulty. His chest tightens with certainty. Adaptation has been noticed, and whatever comes next will not allow him to stay comfortable for long. The dead begin changing their behavior subtly. They stop rushing blindly toward noise and start approaching slowly, speaking softly to lure reactions. Jack notices patterns forming, bait instead of force, memories used like hooks. A woman hums a lullaby outside the shelter, calm and gentle. The sound vibrates inside Jack's chest like a trap waiting to close. Jack orders everyone into complete stillness, using gestures, breathing shallow and controlled. The humming continues for hours without pause, never growing louder, never fading, testing endurance rather than fear. One survivor breaks silently, shaking uncontrollably. The humming stops instantly, replaced by dozens of voices closing in. Jack pulls the group deeper underground as walls begin to shake. The shelter holds but barely, dust raining from the ceiling. Jack absorbs panic from the group like pressure in his skull, emotions pushing back harder than before. When silence finally returns, he collapses, blood trickling from his nose. The cost of control now physical, the system demanding payment for every advantage he gains. Dreams worsen. Jack relives moments that never happened. Dying in alleys, burning buildings, locked rooms. Each ending differently, but all familiar. He wakes knowing how long death takes here. Knowledge he never earned. The sense of repetition grows stronger, like he has failed this scenario before, many times. Each run leaving scars he cannot remember. On the surface, the city reorganizes itself. Groups of dead patrol familiar routes, guarding places tied to strong memories, schools, hospitals, homes. Jack realizes escape routes are shrinking intentionally, funnels forming, pushing survivors toward confrontation. The environment no longer passive, but responsive, shaping choices instead of reacting to them. A soldier unit attempts a loud evacuation nearby. Armored vehicles rolling in with orders barked confidently. The dead hesitate then, swarm in terrifying coordination, responding to rank and command structure. Jack watches the operation collapse within minutes. Leadership exploited rather than feared. Old rules weaponized against the living. The shelter group fractures after that. Hope thinning dangerously. Jack feels responsible for holding them together, yet attachment increases risk. He keeps emotional distance, teaching calm without connection. Every goodbye feels permanent, every bond a liability. Humanity reduced to a balance between survival and silence. Another message arrives on Jack's phone. Fragmented but readable. Difficulty scaling active. He nearly drops the device. Confirmation that this world adapts like a game tightening its grip. He wonders how many others are being tested elsewhere, and why he alone feels visible to whatever is running this experiment. Jack notices the dead avoid killing him when they can, injuring instead, hurting rather than finishing. A chilling realization forms. He's not prey. He's a variable, preserved to observe outcomes. The dead remember restraint, as well as violence, guided by a logic older than instinct. During a supply run, Jack is cornered in a library, whispers flooding his mind, shelves collapsing, exits blocked. He centers himself fully, emotion flattened to nothing. The dead hesitate, confused, then retreats slowly, leaving him shaking, empty, victorious. The cost is immediate. He feels less human afterward. Back at the shelter, Jack cannot connect anymore. Voices sound distant, faces blur, emotional numbness spreads like frost. Adaptation has succeeded too well. Survival achieved at the expense of identity. He understands the trap now. Live long enough here, and you stop being someone worth saving. As night falls, Jack stares at a dark ceiling, certainty pressing down on him. This world is not trying to kill him quickly. It is trying to see how much he can lose and still function. And somewhere beyond the whispers, something is watching, waiting for the moment he finally breaks. Jack begins to test intentional signals. Not noise, but controlled emotion, released like a pulse. He focuses on calm authority and lets it leak outward briefly. The dead pause and turn toward him without rushing, recognition flickering across ruined faces. He withdraws the feeling instantly, heart hammering. Realizing influence is possible if applied with precision, he practices shaping emotion the way others shape weapons. Anger compressed into silence, empathy dulled into neutrality, resolve sharpened into something cold. The dead react like tuned instruments, slight adjustments causing different responses. Jack documents results mentally, understanding that this world runs on inputs and outputs far more sensitive than sound alone. Using this control, Jack guides a small group of dead away from a supply route, projecting calm direction like a silent command. They follow briefly before drifting back to old paths. The effort leaves Jack dizzy and hollow, but the proof matters. Memory can be redirected, not erased. And that creates openings where none should exist. The shelter uses Jack's ability sparingly, relying on it only when escape paths collapse. Each use costs him more. Headaches, bleeding ears, emotional flattening. Yet lives are saved. Jack measures worth against damage, knowing the system observes trade-offs closely, likely recording how far he would go before refusing to pay again. Jack's senses attention sharpen whenever he intervenes successfully. Like a camera zooming in, the dead linger longer afterward, studying him, their speech more targeted, referencing recent actions, acknowledging outcomes, feedback loops tightening. This is no longer just a test of survival, but of influence within controlled chaos. During a raid gone wrong, Jack draws a horde toward himself deliberately, leading them away from trapped survivors. He maintains emotional neutrality through sheer will. The strain immense, vision tunneling, voices clawing at his focus. He succeeds. Barely collapsing once the others escape, consciousness fading into static-filled dreams. In the void between sleep and waking, Jack hears layered echoes of other worlds. Screams, cut short, alarms, resetting, lives, restarting. He senses versions of himself failing elsewhere, the weight of repetition pressing down, a pattern emerging. This world feels familiar because it has tested him before, refining variables each cycle. When he wakes, the dead stand at a distance watching, not attacking. Some nod almost respectfully, others look confused, like soldiers awaiting orders. Jack understands the danger. The more control he displays, the more central he becomes, turning himself into a focal point the system can no longer ignore. Jack experiments with withdrawal, suppressing emotion entirely for days. The dead lose interest. Patterns loosen slightly. Danger diffuses. The lesson is clear. Engagement increases difficulty. Passivity lowers stakes, but also limits progress. The system rewards neither extremes fully, pushing him toward a narrow path. A message appears unprompted. Stability achieved. Proceed. Jack stares at the words until they dissolve. Confirmation arrives without explanation. His actions have unlocked a new phase. Whatever comes next will not resemble the slow apocalypse he has learned to navigate. The shelter prepares to move. Following routes, Jack mapped through influence and restraint. Trust in him grows despite his distance. Leadership imposed rather than chosen. Jack feels the weight settle. Knowing every step forward tightens the system's grip, yet standing still guarantees eventual collapse. As they leave the underground space, Jack glances back once, feeling the pull of familiarity fade. This chapter of adaptation complete. The city above waits in uneasy silence, and Jack knows the rules are about to change again, because he has proven capable of learning them too well. The streets feel different as Jack leads the group forward. Too quiet, too organized, the dead no longer wander aimlessly. They stand positioned at intersections and rooftops, watching without moving. Their silence heavier than screams. Jack senses pressure building, like a system reallocating resources, preparing a response tailored specifically to him. When the group crosses an open plaza, the dead begin speaking in unison, voices layered with different ages and accents, repeating Jack's name calmly, not as a threat but an acknowledgement. The sound rattles his concentration, emotions slipping despite control. The dead shift instantly, tightening their formation, reacting to the smallest internal change. Jack signals retreat, but routes collapse as figures emerge from memory-heavy buildings, places tied to childhoods and routines. Schools and offices turned into traps, the city itself weaponized. Jack realizes geography is no longer neutral. The world rearranges itself based on where people once felt safe. The group runs silently, fear leaking despite discipline. The dead match pace effortlessly, apologizing as they advance, explaining why this must happen. Jack struggles to dampen collective panic, the emotional load crushing. His vision blurs, the cost of influence rising exponentially as the system escalates pressure. Jack makes a decision and breaks formation, drawing attention fully onto himself, projecting command and calm simultaneously. The dead pivot toward him immediately, ignoring others. The relief in survivor faces burns into him as he moves away, becoming the singular variable the world seems eager to isolate. The pursuit feels staged, corridors of escape opening and closing deliberately. Jack realizes resistance is no longer the objective. Observation is. The dead corralled him with precision, not rushing, not hesitating, guiding him toward a destination chosen long before he arrived. He reaches a familiar building, a transit hub from his first day, memories of routine flooding back. The dead halt at the entrance, forming a silent perimeter. Jack steps inside alone, understanding this separation was required. The test narrowing from world scale to personal. Inside, screens flicker to life, showing past moments, choices, sacrifices, failures, each replayed without commentary. Jack feels exposed, dissected, evaluated. The realization lands fully now. This apocalypse is not punishment. It is calibration, refining responses through stress and loss. A single figure approaches from the shadows, less decayed than the others. Eyes clear with recognition, it speaks softly, thanking Jack for adapting so efficiently, explaining that memory retention was added to measure empathy under pressure. Jack listens silently, every instinct screaming trap. The figure admits the world is unstable, iterations collapsing too quickly. Jack's performance has extended runtime significantly, interest sharpened, resources redirected. Jack understands he has changed the fate of this reality simply by surviving differently than expected. The figure steps closer and asks Jack to choose: continue shaping this world or move on. The offer feels artificial, constrained, like a menu with hidden costs. Jack senses that refusal and acceptance both lead somewhere irreversible. As the lights dim, Jack feels the pull of other timelines brushing against him, echoes of unfinished trials calling faintly. The decision tightens his chest. Whatever he chooses next will ripple outward, not just airy, but across realities already watching his progress closely. Jack asks, what happens if he refuses? The figure smiles sadly and explains refusal is still data. Every outcome feeds the system. The dead beyond the walls murmur approval, memory echoing like applause. Jack feels the weight of countless eyes, human and otherwise, fixed on his response. This moment shaped long before he woke up. The figure admits Jack exists across simulations, a constant variable inserted to test different rule sets. Memory bleed through is an error that persists, despite resets. A glitch the system cannot fully erase. Jack feels the echo of other lives, pressing closer. Confirmation without comfort. Jack demands to know who built this. The answer is vague by design. Layered organizations, abandoned objectives, systems running long after their creators disappeared, maintenance without meaning. The experiment continues because it has momentum, not purpose. Jack understands now that stopping it may be harder than surviving it. The dead outside grow restless, reacting to Jack's rising anger. The figure warns that emotion still matters. Even here, control remains required. Jack steadies himself, realizing the system never stopped enforcing rules. Not even during Revelation. Jack learns the memory-retaining dead were meant to force empathy into conflict, to see if compassion could coexist with survival. Results were poor. Worlds collapsed quickly. Jack's endurance extended this version, far beyond projections, making him valuable in a way that feels deeply wrong. The figure offers a final explanation. Escape is possible, but costly. Jack can exit this world carrying a fragment of its rules. Memory, influence. Something that will alter the next reality he enters. Contamination across timelines is usually forbidden, but Jack is already compromised. Jack feels the pull intensify. Other worlds overlapping briefly. Flashes of fire, water, silence, skies without sun. The multiverse hums around him like a machine mid-reset. Choice narrowing rapidly. The system pushing toward resolution. He realizes staying means becoming administrator rather than human, shaping a nightmare endlessly. Leaving means infecting another world with this horror in some form. There is no clean option, only trade-offs scaled beyond a single life. The figure steps back and gestures toward a door of white light. Beyond it, another reality waits, untested, unstable. Jack understands the pattern. Every exit is also an insertion. The test never truly ends. Jack takes a final breath, steadying emotion into something sharp and quiet. Whatever he chooses will not just define this world, it will echo across countless others, and the system waits patiently to record the outcome. Jack steps toward the white light and feels resistance like thick water, the world pulling at him as if reluctant to let go. The dead outside begin speaking urgently, not attacking, begging him to stay, recalling lives they lost and futures they never reached. The sound nearly fractures his control, but he keeps moving forward without looking back. As he crosses the threshold, something tears free inside him. A pressure release that feels like ripping fabric. Memory and emotion surge together briefly. Faces flash through his mind. Survivors he abandoned. Voices that thanked him. The system allows the transfer. Alarm silent, but present. Logging contamination as an acceptable deviation. The light collapses inward, and Jack falls hard onto cold ground. Air sharp in his lungs. Silence absolute. He opens his eyes to a new sky. Different color. Unfamiliar stars. Yet something is wrong immediately. The quiet feels too aware. His chest tightens as he realizes the emotional dampening he learned did not reset. Jack stands and senses the environment responding faintly to his mood. Subtle shifts in wind and shadow mirroring internal states. The fragment came with him. The rule of memory-bound emotion now embedded in his presence. He has not escaped cleanly. He has carried the experiment forward. A distant figure moves at the edge of vision, pauses, then speaks Jack's name with perfect clarity. The voice not decayed, not hostile, but familiar in the wrong way. Jack understands instantly. The infection spreads through constants, not worlds, and he is the vector. His phone vibrates. Despite no signal, a final message appears. Transfer successful. Observe effects. Jack crushes the device underfoot, but the confirmation lingers. This was always the intended outcome. Refinement through survival, export through escape. Jack laughs once, then stops, realizing emotion still matters. Control must be maintained even here. The system has learned how he learns and will keep adjusting. This world is not new. It is the next stage. He walks forward cautiously, scanning for signs of danger. Every step feels watched, measured, the sense of being evaluated stronger than ever. Jack is no longer just a subject inside a test. He is a moving variable across simulations. In the distant structures rise that do not belong to this landscape. Fragments from other realities bleeding through. Contamination accelerating. Jack understands the cost of his choice now visible. Worlds do not fail alone. They fail together. Jack stops and looks up at the unfamiliar sky, grounding his breath, preparing to adapt again. Survival remains possible, but innocence is gone. Every victory now carries consequences, far beyond sight. Somewhere unseen systems recalibrate. New parameters locking into place. Jack feels it like a tightening net. The next question already forming. Not what will happen to this world, but what he will turn it into. As Jack takes his first step into the unknown reality, a final thought settles cold and clear. This multiverse is not exploring worlds. It is exploring him, and the experiment is nowhere near finished.